Good day to you all, ladies and gentlemen, and it's been a pretty extraordinary 24 hours for Blizzard and for Shadowlands, giving us everything we hoped to see from this fresh coat of paint that Blizzard has put over itself going into the Shadowlands. Let's get straight into the big news, is that Torghast has had all timer-related restrictions and debuffs removed. They are gone. What we were openly crying out for has happened. So let me get into the details and then we'll talk about it. There's a lot of new anima powers. All classes are now available for Torghast, so we can get our testing done on the Paladin and the Rogue, which we have been waiting to do quite vehemently. But most importantly, the Torments update. So this update, Torments no longer scale with time. Torments are now additional challenges based on floor types you have encountered on that run. Developers' notes from Blizzard: we heard your feedback that Torments were adding too much time pressure. The Jailer may still torment you on higher levels of Torghast, but Torments will no longer scale with time. So they then give some examples, is that if you are unaware, Torghast is broken down into separate themes. There's about 6 of them now, with more being added regularly. And more to be added, of course, over the course of Shadowlands. And now, when you go into a certain area, a certain theme, you'll do 6 levels of that theme. So one might be the Cold Heart Interstitia, another might be the Soul Forge, one is fire-themed, another may be themed around ghostly enemies that drop pools on the floor. Those will come with it at the higher levels, a debuff that grows as you move up through the floors, such as the enemies becoming stronger, having more health, etc. This is a good thing, and we'll come to that in a second. It is not based on time. It doesn't matter how long you spent on any floor. It will simply go up as you increase your duration. As you go up through floors, you will gain an extra 1 of these multipliers. They will now be constant, so as you go higher and higher and higher, you will maintain these debuffs, even if you've moved into a different theme. The developers' notes on this are: these changes, the changes were inspired by feedback from that Torments that reduce your power feel worse than Torments that affect your enemies. As always, we will continue to tune and keep a close eye on difficulty. So that is the removal of things that lowered your damage, lowered your HP, or made you physically vulnerable. Those are the changes they've made there. They've also restructured, and we're starting to see the formation of how this will look in the live version of Torghast, which we still do not have. So again, always subject to change. We now have the 2 separate modes that will be for Torghast. Of course, there is the singular mode, which is designed to get your power gain. So even if you don't like Torghast, Torghast is going to be a mandatory piece of content. This is where you're going to get your legendary stuff. This will be done through 2 set block runs, is what they call them, of which we have 6 total at the moment. These will have 2 available each week, and similar to Visions, they will cycle every week into different ones. Currently on the alpha, we can see the different ones daily. These will be where you go to do the quest runs. They're relatively easy, they can be done very, very quickly, and they will get you done and out the way. They have added difficulty choices to these, so we can maybe expect that in the live version, if you do, say, easy mode, you will get the least amount of legendary rewards. If you do, say, the heroic mode, you will get the most amount of legendary rewards for that week, but that is for that week. The second mode is the Twisting Corridors. This is the quote-unquote endless mode. We do know that Blizzard is very, very, very much thinking that there will be a natural cutoff. That is the end of your Torghast run at some point. They will not allow it to infinitely scale. Mainly, I imagine, because the sheer numbers and damage that people can produce if they go to, say, floor 100 will be just dangerous for the game, because it'll be generating so many huge, enormous numbers. We are already way past the millions of DPS for when we manage to test these higher floors. The Twisted Corridors will, of course, be completely randomized. You'll do that section of 6 levels based on the theme you are in, and then when you go to, say, floor 7, a new set of 6 levels based on a different theme will appear. Then when you go to floor 13, same again, and it will continue to rock up until Blizzard decides when they think that Torghast run should end. Currently, that is after 18 floors, but that is purely for testing purposes as they work out the difficulty. So, some notes on this. Players who seek legendary materials alone can do so in Torghast cell blocks and can earn more materials by climbing higher. Players who are looking for cosmetics or simply want to play without pressure can do so in the Twisting Corridors. So the block mode is the mandatory bit. That's the bit you'll want to do on your characters to get your legendary stuff. The Twisting Corridors, purely cosmetic, have fun, have wild time, way more accessible. Go, 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 enjoy yourselves, play alts, do whatever you want to do. So let's have a little thought about this. One, this is absolutely everything we asked for. The idea of trying to time limit players, this idea of degenerate play being a problem in Torghast was widely outspoken by the people who had tested it heavily as being a stupid idea, made no sense, and there was actually in direct conflict with how Torghast works. There was a lot of people who did support the idea of timers based on not playing Torghast. We saw lots of suggestions such as limiting Bloodlust. That goes against everything that mages and shamans do inside Torghast. A lot of their abilities and anime powers are based around essentially almost getting entirely permanent Bloodlust, which the shamans can do, and insane almost, and including surrender to madness Bloodlust that the mages can do. That was severely limiting them and actually not a problem. The system was already designed around the idea of having permanent Bloodlust. So the idea is that things like Bloodlust and Heroism would be a problem made no sense. The idea of waiting for cooldowns as well doesn't really make much sense either. If players want to do that, they can do that. But again, a lot of Torghast revolves around you kind of having your cooldowns up all the time. It's part of the power creep that happens inside there and is part of the fun of being inside there. Having Avatar up permanently, I've shown on the channel having Earth Elemental up permanently while demolishing enemies with Earthquake. This is all the stuff that happens in there. Trying to time restrict it actually only affects players who are having a more difficult and more engaging start to a run, which in and of itself is part of the fun of Torghast. You can have a difficult start and overcoming that challenge is great. What you don't want to feel is that you're being overly punished because the random nature of the powers you get, the random nature of the layouts you get, gave you an unfavorable start, and for some reason you're being extra punished for that. None of the timer restrictions for Torghast made any sense whatsoever, and I am so happy to Blizzard for actually listening to that, understanding where we were coming from and saying this really doesn't make sense, it has no place inside Torghast, and actually doing something about it. I mentioned that the new Torments, I do wish they would have changed the name, because I know many in the community go Torments equals bad. Try to forget everything you knew about Torments and look at them this way. Is actually a good thing. One of the Torghast, as we did mention a couple of weeks ago when this Torments idea came into the alpha, we did mention that Torghast does have problems. It does have things that need working on. Most importantly is that the player's power increase does not match up with the enemy's power increase. And if you can get past the first, say, 3 floors, you're generally so powerful by that point that you overwhelm Torghast and you become unstoppable and you become a god. So you have this rather engaging, interesting experience for the first 3 floors. After that, it becomes about how powerful you can get because no longer does Torghast really pose a threat. Some of the bosses still do, but for the remainder of the floors, you're kind of starting to sweep them, and it's a snowballing effect. So 4th floor, you're going faster, 5th floor, you're going faster, and by the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th floors, you're really starting to steamroll your way through Torghast. So this is actually a good thing to try and keep the enemies engaging, keep them interesting, keep them doing something. There's still far more work to do there. We have done testing today, and you still very quickly do overwhelm Torghast, even with the Torments. They have not solved that solution yet, but that is the correct development direction to be going in my opinion. Their focus should be entirely on maintaining an engaging experience without nullifying your power gains. What we don't want is you become super powerful, but the enemies are also super powerful, so you might as well still be on floor 1. We don't want that either. What we want is additional challenges, things that make us think about what we're doing and really engage us. They've actually had great success with the trap rooms and new trap floors that they've built into Torghast, which have basically no enemies at all, but entirely decided on traps that are going on inside the floor, with many of them, from swinging blades to burning floors to laser grids. Those have been very, very successful, and I hope to see them really up their ante. I imagine at this point, Blizzard's probably struggling for development time on just how far and how crazy they can go with Torghast. I know many of us have spoke out about having boss rush mode, really crazy bosses, should you be having a successful run where you are dominating Torghast, that unlocks further difficult challenges that are only accessible that way, because even the most casual players will access that at some point. Very similar to what other roguelike adventures do, is reward you for being super powerful by providing you with an even greater challenge to overcome. Things like that. And also affixes and challenge modes that are maybe preset, that allow classes to compete against each other on a predetermined set of floors, predetermined set of powers, or restrictions to see who can be good for that month or good for that week, providing some internal server challenges amongst people just to have fun inside there. Torghast is quite literally a limitless endless possibility in terms of creativity and fun that Blizzard can put into the game. I imagine at this point they weren't prepared for how overwhelmingly positive the reception would be, let alone that all we said with Torghast as feedback is more. And at some point they're like, okay, we do need to make the actual game. So I imagine that's kind of where they're at. And I would hope to get a further interview with Blizzard to see exactly where their head is at regarding Torghast. But this is so wonderful to see. On that note then, the Fire Mages. So during our last interview with Blizzard, with Morgan Day, so many thousands of you inundated us with questions about your classes specifically. And it basically encompassed every single class and spec in the game. I decided that the focus should be on mages and shadow priests, as we do consider them to be some of the worst off so far in Shadowlands in terms of development. I really recommend you check our quick looks out, and we're also going to be revisiting that now. More class changes are coming in, so do pay attention for updates regarding certain classes as class changes are made. But one in particular was the Fire Mages. The Fire Mages have had quite an interesting change from BFA into Shadowlands, is that Ignite will no longer naturally spread. And Blizzard's first suggestion with this was to make Fire Blast the spell you fire, and that will cause Ignite to spread to targets around the target that you Fire Blasted. Big obvious problem with that, of course, is that Fire Blast is integral to Fire Mage gameplay, is how they work. They fundamentally need that spell regularly in order to allow the spec to function. So giving a secondary use to Fire Blast isn't really feasible without crippling the spec, and that is the situation we were in. So Blizzard have listened. They have listened once again, and Phoenix Flames will be returning to the base toolkit of the Fire Mage, very similar to Legion. The Phoenix Flames is back. Phoenix Flames will be returning to the base toolkit and now will have that role of spreading Ignite. They are still maintaining to not have Ignite spread naturally. Now Phoenix Flames will be the spell that you fire off in order to allow Ignite to spread. It still works with hot streaks, so you can still use it in your combustion, and actually provides some interesting gameplay elements here. You can either save up your charges of Phoenix Flames for that combustion, or you want to make sure, I should say, that you have a Phoenix Flames for the end of your combustion in order to spread that powerful Ignite you've generated with combustion. You also have the choice to try and use Phoenix Flames on a more regular basis to spread your normal Ignite outside of combustion. So you have choices to make of, how do I hold on to these charges? Do I want to use a charge here? Do I perhaps want to save them? All this kind of stuff has come into the game. Is this good or bad? Is still yet to be seen on that side, but overwhelmingly, this is good. Phoenix Flames returning to the toolkit as a base ability, good. It having interaction during combustion, good. Having it back, overwhelmingly good. Is it ideal? That still is yet to be seen. We did have Ice, long-term Mage, many years of Mage gameplay at the highest level, testing it today. He was and ahhing, is that we're almost back to a Legion Mage, which many Fire Mages would like to see, as it gives smoother combustions. It feels like a more complete spec, yet it's still got this little awkwardness with spreading the Ignite, which might just be a case of getting used to it, and it'll be fine. I'm certainly not going to poo-poo it just yet. So those are the two big updates we've had today. Blizzard listening again to the community, making it clear. And this is a dramatic change. If this was Blizzard of 2 years ago, I would have expected my Torghast feedback and the feedback of others regarding Torments to go ignored, with Blizzard being relatively stubborn in many occasions with sticking to their guns, saying, no, we feel this is degenerate gameplay in their words, and we're going to stick to it. And that is not what we have seen this day. This is pretty goddamn awesome, and I'm really so happy with what Blizzard is doing here. Thank you so much for listening, guys. We'll keep you updated with any more news as it happens. Be good. Bye-bye.